Hi, welcome to my studio on this very sunny day in March. Spring is in the air, and I've been exploring something I don't usually do, which are sort of fantasy paintings with these little creatures that I'm calling the Spring Welcome Committee. And I laid them in a circle around things that symbolize the change of seasons for me. And I invite you to come along as I show you how to create your own little welcoming committee. First, a shout out to this post on Instagram, My Art Academy 42. I first saw this technique there, then I've adjusted it to share with you. To create your own spring welcoming committee, it's really simple. You need some paper. You might even want to work on a card to send to somebody. You need some kind of black pen, preferably one that is not water soluble, that's permanent. I usually work with microns. You need some way to get these little rectangle shapes of color. I've done some with these Ecoline pens or Tombos. You can use colored pencils to get your color, or of course some trusty watercolors. And a pencil is helpful with an eraser, a paintbrush, and some water. And then I always have paper towels handy. On a scrap piece of paper, I suggest just practicing how to make the little figures. It's so much fun and so easy, you won't believe it. Over here, I have used these Ecoline's brush pens, and those don't have to be permanent. Those can be water soluble, water reactive, whatever. And here I take a pen, so I've made a rectangular shape, and notice that I stay away from anything perfect, seriously. And I just put a little ball at the top and two legs. And if I do that with a few of these figures and put the legs any which way, and then I have the black line coming out from the shoulders, these two figures can actually be holding hands. And you can play with the head direction. You can play with the arms, as you'll see. So this was done with the brush pen. This was done with colored pencil that I set down and then just wet with my paintbrush just to blend it a little bit. And for our purposes for this experiment or just practice, you might want to make those rectangles about a 1/2 inch high and put them about a 1/4 inch away from one another so there's room for the arms. And so, yeah, you can put the little heads looking at each other and the two little legs and the arms down, or you can have the arms across. There is so much room for fun and playfulness to create your own little figures. So use whatever way you have available to create the color. And then the final step is to take just either Payne's gray or a purple. I'm going to just mix a tiny bit of Payne's gray, which I have going already here, and I might add a little purple to that. Okay, and then keep that nice and light. And then just determine if you want your shadows off to one side, you just create a little shadow under the figures, and voila, they're holding hands. And if we take those figures and encircle some symbol of spring that you resonate with, all these little women can be the welcoming committee for that. I'll show you how I created that, how I built on making those little figures. So I encourage you to start with whatever symbol represents spring in your world. You'll notice here that I've got a bulb-like flower coming out of the earth. But since this really is a fantasy, I also put in a feather. I have an egg in a nest, whatever works for you. So paint that on, leaving room on your page. Here are two examples with trees. Here I painted an entire background with the tree, and there's just the tree on the white page. So just make sure you leave enough room to the top of the page. And once you've finished that, let it totally dry, and we'll go on to the next step. So once your little spring symbol is totally dry, I recommend that you take a pencil and draw in your basic ellipse shapes. So I've got a curve here in the front, and I'm leaving space down below my little spring image there, and that's going to be where the heads kind of line up. And then on the sides, I just put 2 vertical lines, and then I basically draw in that same ellipse with my pencil. And again, this is approximately, I don't know, an inch high, maybe a little less, whatever. I don't measure anything. And then in the back, you want to repeat that ellipse shape, but this time, instead of it being an inch high, that's probably going to be about 3/4 of an inch if you're into measuring. But the point is, this height is smaller than this height. And I do this with a pencil and I just go right through my spring shape, no problem. Just keep your pencil kind of light, because you'll be erasing that after you get the basic figures on. Now it's, party time. So I'm going to take whatever I'm using to make my color, and I'll just put my rectangle shapes of color randomly, because for me, I'm not necessarily starting a pattern. So I'll just put them randomly around and embrace the variation. Do you see they're hardly perfect? And these pencil lines were just guidelines. I didn't, exactly meet top and bottom. Once that completely dries, if you've used watercolor, make sure that's completely dry. Then you're going to erase the pencil. The pencil is gone, and here's the magic. I'm going to have these little figures talking to each other. So I've put the 2 heads kind of tipped towards one another and put the hands down as if they're conversing. And I will keep going with my 2 little straight lines, the ball for the head, and then the arms can even just go straight across. I'll fill those in to create all my welcoming committee. So here you see I've completed the heads, the little balls on each of the rectangles. I've completed the legs, and I've connected them all through just these really simple lines to make it look like arms. And now for the rest of the magic, we need a little shadow. For my shadow, as I said, I'm using Payne's Gray with just a little bit of purple mixed in. And I just keep it consistent, always going off to the one side. And I put the little figures, making it look like they're back behind the spring image. And I've got all the shadows going out. And then I know that this would probably create a shadow as long as I'm doing that over here. So I'm going to just add a little extra. And there's my welcoming committee with my spring image. I hope you have fun with this technique. There is no end to the ways you can personalize it. You can go back in and pattern the dresses, play with the pen you use, the different colors for the head shapes, etc. I just think it's just a really sweet way to welcome spring. I hope you have fun, and I hope you'll like this video, subscribe, and share your work. And for more tips and tricks and to receive my adventure journaling newsletter, check out my website, jcmamet.net. Happy spring!